ดูไปแลดูลำบากเผยไปเลยแล้วกัน
kind of a base feature like that, because like a lot of the identity of the weapons is, you know, comes from that. Now what I do think is important is like, okay, if you want to do you know, something with Falling Thunder, like ideally weapon swap is the way you achieve that. And so if weapon swap isn't good, then that means that synergy isn't going to be good. So like that, I feel, is the way to solve that, is just make the weapon swapping better. That being said, like I do think that you can make things possible using uniques, right? Like you can have a unique you know, mace that lets you use quarter stuff, because that might not necessarily be exactly that combo, but you know, like what I'm saying is you can do stuff like that, and like more uniques is going to really be able to unlock those types of things.
That'd be awesome.
So that just comes down to like making more build enabling uniques that can do that kind of stuff. But I do think it's important to keep the identity of the different weapon classes, and yeah, it's the weapon swap where just making that better will make it, those cross-class things, more viable.
I just heard the animators screaming from a few rooms away when you said they're going to allow that. So, oh God.
Well, thankfully it's a lot easier to animate on the POE 2 rigs, so you know, it should. But yeah, as I said, it really is more of a unique thing, I would say.
Okay, awesome. Well, that sounds cool. All right, so this is on progression and the Atlas skill trees. So presently, and this is I guess is more of a personal / casual dad gamer question for you. Sorry. Right now, it feels like there was a large time investment in to access not the entire trees, but just the initial like 2 points, maybe, right?
Yeah.
To fight your first
100%.
audience for the king and everything. And I'm wondering if you guys are okay with what the progression's at. And I know you guys have been constantly lowering the amount of time it takes by upping splinter counts, making things more common. So I'm wondering, do you think with the new updates you're going to be in a better position? And why do you think you were in this position in the first place? Like, did you just miscalculate how long it was going to take people to reach these things? Because it was a lot of time in.
yeah, there's a few things. So one of them is that, for sure, just miscalculating the amount of time, like definitely the case. But the other problem is that we don't have enough content in each of the kind of in-game league mechanics at the moment. Like, I mean, there was supposed to be more breach bosses than just one, right? And like we have the models, right? We've got stuff that we'll do. Like it will happen at some point, right? And it's like all of that stuff exists. It's just that like it isn't in yet. And so it's like what that sort of led to is a situation where you've got this big gulf in the middle of the progression of each of those leagues, right? Like there isn't kind of like you start breach and it's cool when you start, and there's a kind of a big gulf, and then you get to the end of it. It's like there needs to be more of that middle stuff kind of in there to kind of like, you know, fill into, to give you points to kind of have more of that progression going on. And so it's like what I would say is, like, to run with that example, it's like I wouldn't consider breach to be finished, right? Like there is more stuff that needs to be there, but to make that a full thing, and that's what we need to be doing, expanding and automate that. So like, I mean, there is tons we would do, right? Like with that stuff. Like the onboarding of it's not good enough. Like there's just it's all the progression stuff around it. It's just not enough content, right? We just need more content. Now, unfortunately, I don't know. Like, I mean, we'll get more of it in 030, but I don't know that I would say it's fixed yet in 030. Like that is something that we will be continuing to add. Like it's one of the things that I think is up there in terms of the tiers of problems that we have, you know, for the end game. But like I would say, what I'm saying is, like, I think we know what the problem is and we know how to fix it. It's just really the time to make all that content and like get all those bosses and get all that stuff done. So we're you know with each expansion we're chipping away at it, we're adding more stuff, and like that'll get better. But it will just take a little while to just get all of that in and sort of get it done. So yeah, I would just say, yeah, there's more content that we wanted to add to all of these than what was added, and then therefore that'll come in as we go.
So there'll be like different choke points essentially where you're going to hit these different tiers.
Yeah, I mean, you get more of the stuff, you know, like, I mean, if you compare like breach and POE 1 to POE 2, like there's just more stuff going on with it, in terms of like the the different types of different types of breach encounters and the different breach bosses and stuff like that. Like there's just more going on. So like that's the kind of thing you need, and like that level of content is what you need to kind of make it good. So yeah,
okay,
more stuff will happen. We'll get there. Like it'll happen, but it just takes a little while to get to that point.
Okay.
So like yeah, as I said, might not. In 0.3.0 we'll make improvements, but I think it's probably more like 0.4.0 will that'll really start to come together.
Okay. How do you feel about the dichotomy between something like Breach Splinters, which I'd argue is rather deterministic at this point, versus an audience with a king and accessing the ritual boss and needing to find it in a ritual and defer it? Like, do you guys like that there's differences there, or?
I mean, personally, I do. Like, I like it when content feels different as much as possible. Like, there was certainly discussion, like when we were talking about being able to make, like have it be early. Because one of the things we wanted to make sure we're doing is that, like, for the earlier difficulty levels, it's easier to get the audiences and so on. And so then we started talking about, how are we going to do that for ritual? Maybe we need to add splinters to that. And I was kind of like, no, I don't really want to just have it so that every in-game pinnacle just works the same way. Like, I like there to be feeling like there's differences in how they all work. So ideally we can sort of keep the flavor and different sort of ways of interacting with these things if we can.
Okay. I want to throw this in there. Who made the call to vacuum Breach Splinters? Was there anybody who just said, it's time, let's do it?
It was probably Mark, I would say. It wasn't me, but yes, probably Mark. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That was a pretty cool change, I gotta say. Okay, this one has to do with monsters specifically, Jonathan. And it's something we chatted about in December. And I was really hyped about it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So when we last talked, you spoke about how normal and magic monsters will be different compared to rare monsters, not only in terms of the random modifiers that spawn on them, but the fact that, let's say, a vulture demon that is rare will have an extra actual ability compared to a magic or common vulture demon. I've never noticed those in game. Are those still in game? And I'm just not noticing them.
I know what you mean. So it didn't actually happen as much as I had expected that to actually happen. So I think there's probably like 3 monsters or something like that ended up actually doing that, and like that was way less than what we expected. Like, I know one of them is like the Death Knights have an extra ability and like a few things like that. But so like there's stuff like that, but it's like it didn't actually happen as much as I wanted. It's one of those things where, like, if I had time, I would go and do a bunch of that stuff. And like, we thought we were adding more of them than we actually ended up doing. So that's kind of what sort of ended up happening more is like more of the specific balance sort of happened, but less of the like extra abilities happened. And that I think what the issue is that, so effectively there's a lot less monsters that can be rare than can be the monster set. Like a lot of monsters are just disabled from being rare because they don't make a good rare fight, and the intention to fix that is to make it so that when we have a monster where we say this can't be a rare because it's it doesn't have enough going on with it, that's where we wanted to add a new ability to make that happen. So it really is just more work to do that, but it's sort of hard to make that the thing that's more important than, like, effectively, like, resources got pulled off and put onto a bunch of other things. And so that's like one of those things I really think I'd like going, but at the moment we just as I said, it's on like 3 monsters and we need to do more later, I'd say.
All right, I thought I wasn't saying it, so I just wanted to confirm that. And I was also curious, there are some monsters that instill like fear and horror into people when they play PoE 2. Is there any specific one monster that makes you like clench up when you hear it or see it on screen? I
mean,
a lot of people hated those vultures that leapt 4 screens away. Like, people hated those.
I mean, the funny thing in endgame is it's probably the frickin' what do you call them? Quill crabs are probably the thing that's the most.
Or the serpents.
But it's funny. The answer is so different in endgame versus not. Like, in the campaign, my favorite monster is the Eternal Knight. Like, I really love that thing. It's just like one of my favorite monsters, just because I like how, like, the counterplay you have to do with it and that kind of stuff. But in endgame they just kind of end up dying. It's like, doesn't really matter.
I think that was my first hardcore death, was to the Eternal Knight.
Right. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Before we get into actual Dawn of the Hunt specific stuff, 2 more questions about the general game. So one of them might be pretty quick. Originally, when you guys were pitching Path of Exile 2, the pitch was every zone is going to have like a boss in it. Now, I know now during early access, not every zone has a boss. Like, all of them have like cool encounters and the like, but not all of them have a boss encounter. Is the plan still for every zone to have a big boss, or is it a little bit more dispersed throughout the campaign now?
I want that to happen. I don't know if it'll happen for release or not. Like, so we have bosses for these, right? Like all of the areas in the game, we have a boss that's for that area. It's just that not all of them are finished, and it's about getting time to finish making them. So it's kind of like, okay, like certainly the promise of having 100 bosses will be like 100% like over delivered as far as like getting like once we get to release. As to whether or not every single area will have a boss at release, potentially not.
Okay.
But it's like we do have all the bosses sitting there like waiting to actually just get all the VFX and get all the stuff like there. Like it's just we just have to get them done. So like I eventually we will definitely get there because like as I said, the bosses are just sitting there. We just need to freaking make them. Like we have models, we've got rigs, we've got all that stuff. It's just we don't have the animation finished and the VFX done and like all the actual design work that needs to happen to actually make it good. Yeah, like as I said, still the plan. It's just that there might be other things that feel more important to us to do rather than add a boss to one particular random zone during the campaign.
That makes total sense. Excited to hear though that they're there. They're just waiting for balance. Okay, cool.
Right.
All right. Before we get into the specific 0.2.0 and 0.2.1 balance and additions, I'm really curious. Obviously, you guys are getting a ton of critical feedback to the game, and Mark really likes bingo cards. What is the best place for us to put this feedback? Is it like on your forums, on Reddit, in posts? How do you guys like to consume this best? Especially, you're talking about like an elite cabal of balancers in the game. Like how do they like to read the feedback the best? Like, what's the most productive? I guess.
Well, the reason we like the bingo cards is because it forces someone to really consolidate what is the most important things. Like if they're going to make a bingo card, it's like you can't just like kind of go on a rant and have a billion different little things where you kind of don't know what's important. It's like these are actually the things that you are saying are important to us, and so that's kind of the reason why I like that. Now, in terms of like, so we obviously have got our community team. They're reading like all these different places. So like, I'm going to get feedback like of the overall like sentiment of like what people are complaining about the most from them, regardless of kind of where you post it. But in terms of like what I like to consume myself, that's why we like the bingo cards. But also like, like someone who makes a video essay on YouTube, like that's the kind of thing where like I can sort of listen and understand the, like there tend to be like if they're a creator with like a lot of views, I'm going to be paying attention to that stuff, right? So like that stuff is another thing that I like to watch and understand. But as I said, like in terms of just like random people posting, it really doesn't matter where you post because our community team will pick it up and they'll get it and they'll find it and deliver it to us.
Okay, more bingo cards. They're coming your way. Sounds good.
Yep.
All right, so Dawn of the Hunt, Jonathan. I think we mentioned this a little bit earlier with disengage and rake, but the spear skills, people loved the mobility that they added to the game. A lot of people are using them on different builds or classes that aren't actually using the spear for damage and everything, right? With disengage especially. We saw, the race with like Angermus and everybody else just disengaging through the campaign, right?
Right.
I'm curious, seeing that people really like the mobility the spear has, is this making you guys consider perhaps adding more mobility skills to future weapons, to previous weapons, just to give people more tools to move throughout the game?
Well, I mean, it comes down to what's the feeling of the weapon supposed to be, right? In the case of the spear, you're talking about, a dexterous melee weapon. Like the quarterstaff is not as agile, but it's still more agile compared to the mace. You know what I mean? Like, once swords are in, they're going to be more agile than a mace, but potentially less agile than a spear. Like you're just kind of wanting to get that feeling of like, of each weapon kind of has that feeling. So I mean, look, every weapon type should have some level of mobility, but like the spear really probably is about I always want that to be the thing that has the maximum mobility. That's why it sort of feels like that. That's what makes it feel different.
Yeah, you guys achieved it. It's pretty darn mobile. I love Thunderous Leap. I'm also curious, just as a brief follow-up, have you guys ever considered more blink-like spirit gems for dexterity and strength-based classes? Because obviously this is an intelligence gem. We'll get into attributes in just a moment.
Right.
They're sometimes a little tight. Have you guys thought about like a flavorful way to do blinkish abilities on other archetypes?
If that happens, it's probably going to happen on the on the Dexant class that we haven't yet released. Like that's the one that would be in theme with that kind of ability. So
Shadow
yeah, that's kind of where you'll see that. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one is a little way out still, but there's a lot of design stuff along those lines, I would say for that class.
All right, little tidbits for Shadow enjoyers out there. All right. All right, so on from the mobility front to crafting systems in Dawn of the Hunt. So Dawn of the Hunt introduced a lot of different crafting systems or items to the game. Now, a lot of them are really cool. I'm curious, how do you feel, how much should an average player be engaging with them in endgame? So I'm not even talking about campaign. I'm talking, you're in the endgame, you're running maps. How often should I be touching something like the Recombinator?
Well, Recombinators are in particular like the one that I would say is the most kind of, like it does take a certain level of person to use that, right? Like that is like a for you have to be a bit of a grinder to be able to use that system for sure. So like that one,
right?
I mean, I would say that one is sort of designed to be that way. Like, and it kind of has to be just due to the nature it works. And the funny thing about Recombinators, and I feel like I've said this before, even with the previous designs, that like it is really hard to make something with with that mechanic that isn't, that both feels like that it's worthwhile for a player while also not completely being ridiculous from the perspective of like making the item game too easy. And it's like it's really hard to get into a place where you've kind of got like both of those two things. Like the benefit that recombination gives you compared to using other types of crafting methods is actually ridiculous, but yet it also feels completely like the chances are incredibly tiny to a player.
Yes.
So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you sort of always ends up like that. And we sort of had trouble with recombination a few times. As to whether or not players should use it more, I mean, we sort of the target was that people would be using it like once per expedition, and I guess I don't know if we've like completely succeeded at that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like that's kind of one of those things. But yeah, that one I would say is definitely one of the harder ones. Like for the other ones, like we want a variety. Like some of them you should be using all the time. Some of them you should be using much more rarely. We're about to add a bunch of these new runes and things like that. Like those ones are kind of intended to be like, they're a thing you want to find, like they're rarer, like, they're called chase drops to find that. Those would be relatively rare, but still way more common than what the current rarest shit is. So like, because we had that problem, of course, that we found out. That one, like, so effectively it should be a mix, in my opinion. We're kind of a little like want to really make sure though that you don't get to the point of like you get suddenly inundated with like too much all at once. So we just have to like balance that a little bit.
Okay. I'm curious about the socketable system, Jonathan. So right now you touched on a whole bunch of chase socketables are being added to the game. And right now many of the stuff in game are meant to solve simple problems, right? The rune system was pitched as kind of a replacement for Path of Exile once crafting bench, and with these new chase socketables being added to the game, it seems like that might be fading a little bit away. Is there going to be other ways to solve these simple problems that people have in the future or imminently? Or
well, I get so I guess the feeling that we have is like as you kind of get deeper into the end game, then you'll get to the point where the base items that you're getting, because they're getting better, are kind of able to solve your problems more, and so therefore you don't have as much need to rely on the runes to do that. Now there'll be people who will argue that like they're still having to rely on them a lot for things like attribute requirements, and that's like another whole topic that we could talk about. Like that's a thing for sure. So it's kind of like, but the ideal we kind of want to strive for is like as you progress through the end game, your items are getting better. You no longer need, you might be a bit overcapped on res, because you're getting the items are getting better. Therefore, you're like, okay, you're getting to the point now where you can say, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice this rune slot, and that's right around the time when you're getting these like rarer chaser and other socketables coming in. So that's kind of like the feeling that we sort of want to achieve. And so then by the time you're like ultra top tier, you're like, I'm not using, I'm basically not using any attribute or resistance socketables. I'm only using these like ultra chase like really things, or maybe it's like kind of 75 25 with 25 on just to fix that one resistance that's not quite right, like that kind of thing. That's kind of where we want to be as you kind of get through that progression, to kind of get that feeling of like another feeling of progress for the character.
Okay. On the resistance front too, we'll talk about attributes in a second, but resistances especially, I and many other players have found it almost, so when you find a new cool item and you want to replace it, but it's going to replace an item that solves many of your resistances, right? It turns into this whole game of gear shuffling, and this is primarily, I think, an early end game thing, right? You don't have a lot of currency to trade with, or maybe you're playing SSF, and this basically ruins your character, and it causes you to need to reshuffle everything. Are you guys aware that is kind of like the POE 1 like gem system, where the whole shuffling constantly had to occur, and that you have to juggle these defenses to maintain that base level of LE res. And you think there are any solutions that could be added to the game? I know in Path of Exile 1 there was like the harvest resistance swap on items. Maybe that could be like an omen that could be found.
So the harvest resistance swap. So I actually talked to Mark about this recently.
Okay.
And we were discussing about like whether or not we were happy with the harvest resistance swap, and like we were kind of like, the worry there is that it does make things a little bit too easy as far as the item game goes, like for sure. Like he was kind of like he sort of had the opinion that like, you know, like that's kind of like it's part of what like, yeah, it's sort of part of what sort of trivialized like, you know, getting things exactly where you needed them to go. Like he's kind of the opinion that that was too powerful. We sort of talked for a while about this, and the issue that we were having is like, okay, so I'm like, okay, sure, so you could make something like that, but just make it really rare, right? And it's like, well, okay, but if it's rare, then you're not exactly solving your gear shuffling problem because like, you know, that you need to be doing that all the time. So it's kind of like we're in a bit of a hard place. So I actually don't really have an answer to how like we can improve this without kind of like compromising the item system, what we would consider to be too much of a way. You know, like, so this is I guess this is a potential concern. Now, the runes in theory kind of do address that, because it's like you can temporarily kind of like use them. But then the concern is, okay, and like we've already sort of thought about this, but we kind of like are sort of probably just okay with it for the time being. Like, obviously the concern is, and this is the thing Mark brought up, is like, okay, you can't take a socketable out. These chase runes, if you can't do that, it does mean that you're going to be like, okay, I'm not going to use it until I know my gear is perfect, right? Like you like there's this concern if they're chase. So we did sort of discuss whether or not we want to think about that. Now we are just going to, for the time being, just leave it how it is. But like, there's definitely this concern of like, okay, if you got to really chase socketable, you know, like you're going to save it for only an item that you know is perfect. And so yeah, we'll sort of see how that plays out. But you know, we'll have a look at that a little bit later.
Okay. I'm also curious on like the attribute front. It seems like right now, the introduction of spears, it became prevalent to me, and in 0-1 it wasn't as crazy. It seems like attribute requirements are super high for some items and even some gems. Are you guys aware that they might be? I don't even think it's that much. I think it's like maybe 10-15% too high. Are you guys looking into adjusting that at all? Or
so
you okay where they
this
are?
is another one of those things that I kind of was thinking about. So I was kind of like, okay, I think what it comes down to is this. If you are playing a strength character, and should it be the case that you don't have to worry about attribute requirements for strength gear, or should you still sometimes run into something where you're like, okay, I need to allocate a bit more extra strength for this? Like, should this be the case or not? It's currently kind of balanced to a point where it's like, you know, like you have to occasionally care about attribute requirements. And what that means, of course, is that if you then want to splash and do something else from a different character, that's like relatively harder, right? And so I was sort of thinking about this, and I was like, I might be open to lowering it a little bit down for gems to kind of allow for more of that like thing. I wouldn't be much, I think, like, you know, because I don't want to make it completely like, I feel like in POE 1 it was kind of most the case that attribute requirements were pretty irrelevant for a lot of things. Like it mattered a little bit, but like not very much, you know, like I don't think it mattered a lot. And so we did want to kind of make sure that attributes mattered more. But it's possible we overshot a little bit for the gems. I think for the gear, it's okay. I don't think that we've got like a huge problem there necessarily, although there are maybe a few cases where like people would argue that it's not right. I could definitely see the argument for gems coming down a little bit. It's one of those things that I want to definitely have another look at, because it's something that we can definitely sort of think about changing for sure. Okay. The main thing is just making sure that people can run builds. But on some level, there is intended to be an optimization problem, right? It's like, okay, you got to be thinking like, okay, if I want to do this and use an off-class thing, it's like now I'm making a sacrifice somewhere else. Like having to allocate the attributes is what prevents you from making a build that's just literally the best thing from every class on one build. Like that would be an ultra dominant. Like the attributes are the only thing really preventing that from being the case. So especially you know, with more of the combo stuff going on, we just have to be a little bit careful about that. So you know, like that's really the sort of the only control level we have around that. So yeah.
Okay. Now yeah, especially on spears. I feel like those, like, because they encourage you to go in like sometimes all 3 attributes or 2 certain attributes, and it gets a little tough. That's just what I experienced. So maybe a little bit on that front, but...
Is there a tri-attribute spear?
I believe that... Maybe I'm crazy. Chat's probably going insane if I'm wrong. I thought there was. I might be wrong. But I remember I was just struggling on 0-2 or 0-1. Right. I was not. And it was rough. It was rough in 0-2.
Right, okay. Understood.
Okay. So here's another curious one that I've seen a lot of debate about. So movement speed in Path of Exile 2. We're not even going to talk about boots, Jonathan. I just want to talk about the baseline movement speed, and not compared to monsters or anything, just the overall movement speed of a character. And the monsters too. A lot of people feel like it's too slow. And like a gauge people give is when you get Hare's Foot, that boon in Trial of the Sekima, it's like 30% increased movement speed. People are like, oh, that's where we should be, right? How do you feel about it maybe being a bit too slow? Do you think it's fine where it is? Just in general.
Well, as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, but as far as I know, the baseline movement speed in POE 1 and 2 is the same. Like, I don't believe it is actually different. The difference is in, like, the things you're doing, right? Like the skills that allow you to move all the time and all that stuff, right? As far as I'm aware. Now, as far as movement speed is concerned in general, I don't want to spoil anything, but like we are working on things around this for 030. We do have ideas for what we want to do. I don't want to break the combat system. Like if we just buffed movement speed for the player, like the baseline, it would break the combat system in a lot of ways. Like we'd have to do a lot of stuff. There's like animations. It would be a huge deal.
Yeah.
But we have some ideas. You know, but we'll talk about those a little bit. Like just probably 030 announcement. I would say as we'll be talking about that. But yeah, we've got some ideas. Like I think that there is something we can improve here. That will be the best of both worlds of still having combat mattering while still, you know, like being something that can help players with this concern. So like there's stuff that we can do. So maybe
something
I guess
that's
I wouldn't
like a little
really
bursty, right? It's not maybe tied to gear. It's just every so often
so,
you get a little dopamine rush.
So we'll see. We'll see about stuff like that. So I definitely understand the problem, right? Like so in terms of tier 1 issues that we have that we want to address in 030, this is in the list, right? Like this problem that people have. Like you know, like I mean, we've got our list of tier 1 issues that we're like we can't release 030 without. You know, like even though I said we weren't locking features, I mean, some of the things that you see, some of these things we're like, here's the tier 1 issues we're
working on it.
This is one of them. This movement speed concern that people have is a concern. But as I said, I just don't want to ruin the combat system too much, so that's why we have to be a bit careful.
Okay, no, that's fair. Completely swapping gears, Jonathan, you guys added a pretty cool item in 020 in the Grand Project Precursor tablet. And it allows you, if you use it in a tower, it allows you to go into any map node or in the radius of that tower. A very interesting person brought up the fact, oh, maybe this is a little bit of an experiment to bring this as a core ability to towers. It makes Atlas traversal so much smoother. You know, we can get to cool destinations faster, skip around to the maps we'd like to play. Is there any chance in your mind that this would go core?
I don't think that I want something like. I don't think I'd want that to be core to towers, but like I guess if you're saying things like that, it sort of implies that you're not finding the things you want to find easily enough, which is the thing that I'd be looking to address with a concern like that. So that's kind of how I'd see that. Like, it's like if you feel like that's necessary, it's probably because there's something wrong with the way that the you know, like the amount of stuff you're finding. So there's definitely something that we need to address there. Like there are some concerns around the stuff for sure. I mean, one thing that we just actually I don't know whether it was deployed or not. Maybe it might be in 021 actually. Because like right now there's this like thing where there's a horrible imbalance of what maps like some maps are way more common than others. You know, and this is something that we have a fix for. As I said, I wasn't sure whether or not it went out in a point release or whether or not it's a 021. I think it's in 021 actually.
I think it's coming in 021. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's in 021. So, you know, we're effectively making it so that like the maps are much more even. So like you won't see nearly as many like you know, I think it's hidden grottos, isn't it? The one that you know,
hidden grottos.
You get constantly. Yeah, like stuff like that, like will improve a lot. So I think that'll help as well. Like I think it really just comes down to balance of like when you find things, where you find them, that kind of stuff. Like to me, that's really what it is. And I guess it also comes down to sort of like the other reasons you might want to be like skipping more of the Atlas content is that you're not feeling like you're seeing what it is you want. And I guess that's another larger issue with towers as well.
I think another thing that people really would like is more just player agency, right? To be able to, like you kind of said, run the maps that they'd like to run with the mechanics that they'd like to run. And the Grand Project tablet allows that, right? if you see a
Right.
breach and a ritual and everything on your favorite map layout, but it's on the opposite side of the tower and you gotta run
Right.
10 maps to get there, you know, it
Right.
kind of is a feels bad moment. But just more like
There's actually
Go for
so
it.
that is a broader issue that I've noticed with the current way the Atlas works, which is not something that we initially. It's more subtle. It's actually comes down a little bit to the overlapping tower thing as well, and it's only sort of a realization that we came to recently. So, how can I put this together? Like, okay, so there's this issue of like if you know in advance that something isn't the best, then it feels bad to have to kind of go through it like already knowing that it's not the thing you wanted. And so what I'm talking about this is like, okay, and this is something that the old Atlas, like in PoE 1 Atlas didn't have, that PoE 2 Atlas does have, that's like, you know, just to think about it, it's like, okay, so the overlapping towers thing is a great example, right? It's like, if you know that overlapping towers is the best thing, then every time you see a non-overlapping tower, you're like, oh, I have to just get through this so I can get to the next overlapping tower. And like, let's just say, for example, and like this is a terrible idea, so I'm not actually going to do this, but I'm just like, let's just say, for example, that we had a mechanic where, and I wouldn't do this for like 10 reasons, but that like when you run a map, there's a random chance that it turns into a tower, right? Let's just say, for example, we had that mechanic. What that would mean is that now you at any time could get the best thing. So you don't feel bad about running maps that you know can never be the best, because at any time the maps could be the best. And this comes down, I think, to the sort of core of like AIPG itemization as well, where it's like one of the reasons why it's good is because, like, you know, the next rock you turn over could contain the mirror drop, right? So it's like you don't feel bad about killing monsters, even if, like, you know, like, assuming we get everything right, that is, you know, because it's like, okay, there could be a good thing like right around the next corner. It's like if you knew that every monster that you killed was going to drop nothing. Like, let's say, so here's another example of a thing that would be similar, right? Let's just say that all the monsters in a map drop nothing except the boss, right? Let's just say that that's what you had.
Okay.
If you had that, killing all those monsters would feel like a chore, because like there was no chance of that ever returning anything for you, right? You're just like, I just want to get through this to get to the boss, right? And so you've kind of got a similar thing going on, but on like a higher level with the Atlas system, where it's like, you know that this part isn't the best, therefore like I feel bad having to grind through it. Like if they had a chance of being the best, it would be fine. So I feel like we need to find a way to make that more the case. And like I was sort of discussing, like as a random example that's kind of a bit related, although not exactly the same, of like, you know, in PoE 1, any map could just randomly spawn a breach.
Yes.
For example.
Yes.
In PoE 2, you know when you don't have one. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like there's this like so like that sort of element sort of like has a thing there. So there is something to this, and like I can see that there's a problem. I just need to sort of work out exactly how we're going to. And the things that like as I said, the thing I just said there before, like that would solve the problem. I just hate it for 10 other reasons. I'm just sort of putting that out there as like an example. To evoke the idea of how it would feel to you if that was how it worked, you know what I mean? So like that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about how to sort of resolve this problem. So we do need to do something. Like I like a lot of what the tower mechanic does, but like there's still not something quite right about it. Like there's some stuff we have to do, and I also really love that sort of feeling of exploration thing going on. But you know, I guess something we didn't realize is like, when you can see things in advance, you have to be really careful that you don't let the amount of importance that can have be too high, because that undermines the feeling of everything else. So like that's kind of like a thing I guess we need to think about. So yeah, there's certainly some stuff to think about here. We need to work out what exactly we're going to do about it.
All right, yeah, I think you're touching on the exact feeling I had like when going back to Path of Exile 1, and I always had that feeling of surprise or mystery going into all the maps, and that's just not in PoE 2. So I'm glad that it's on your guys' radar. That's awesome.
Right.
Oh.
Well, I mean, in 020, we did intend to improve that situation by adding more random things. And so having more random things that aren't just the leagues is also a way to sort of improve that. And so 020 helped with that to some degree. But I do think that there's still like an issue around that to think about.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let's see. I know we're running short on time. I know you have to run in about 25 minutes. So I'm a little bit curious on, let's see here. I'd love to touch on races for just a moment, since you guys are running quite a few of them. Okay. So they're obviously back for Path of Exile 2. You guys have been running them pretty consistently. I'm curious, is there anything in particular you guys are trying to glean while watching these races? Like, are they influencing any balance decisions, or are they showing you, you know, oh, well, this part of the campaign could be improved in a certain way? I'm really curious to hear. Or are they just pure for entertainment?
I wouldn't say that we learn much about things from that perspective beyond just about what races are doing, right? There's obviously changes we could make for races in particular. It doesn't influence too much about the rest of the campaign, I would say, just because like the things that they're doing are really just quite outside the norm of what normal players experience. So yeah, it really is more of a just a like, you know, fun thing we enjoy doing that, you know, like that's more of what it's about. I wouldn't say that there's like a kind of development reason to run them per se.
Okay. Yeah. All right. This is a very early game question, Jonathan. So and the guy I'll use him as an example is my dad. So a lot of very new players to ARPGs, they started playing POE 2 as like their first ARPG ever, and a lot of them are unaware of the importance of certain items in the game, like crafting currency, right? A lot of people like will just hoard it, even though the currency says, "Hey, use me on items," right? Are you? Would you be open to the idea of like maybe doing a very short like quest or tutorial in Act 1 to put people on this path? Because once I showed him how to do it, Jonathan, dude, he's ground more than I have in POE 2 this season.
I actually already had this idea, and it's already something that we've got in the works. So like awesome. I just want to show everyone, like, because like, okay, a major experience like a major difference in experience is just transmuting your weapon. If you transmute your weapon, you're gonna have a way different time than if you don't know to do that. So that's something we're going to explicitly say, like, okay, here is a quest where, you know, it's going to drop a transmute, it's going to tell you use your weapon, you know, like cool. Actually, like, you know, to really make sure that new players know how to do that.
Okay, that makes me so happy to hear for a lot of the new people coming to the game. That'll be great for like 1.0's launch and all that too. Cool. Okay, back to item questions. So Path of Exile 2, unique items. A lot of the items right now, they fall off as you go into endgame and you scale your character, but it's not because they aren't cool. A lot of them are super cool, but they have no way to scale, you know, past a certain threshold in the game. Are you guys okay with the number of uniques that are in the game, are cool, but just become a little blip in a character's journey? Or are you looking into really reinvigorating some of these items?
I would say, I mean, look, there are some that we definitely need to make more powerful, but I would say that like a lot of the reason is just because we started working on the lower level ones and we're only getting, you know, like only since 010's launch, I would say, have we really been focusing on the more high level stuff. And there's more of that stuff coming. I mean, we have more uniques coming, you know, in 021. Like the focus on unique design now is that sort of in-game, like, you know, like later on stuff that you can use viably on a character going forward. So like that is definitely the case. You know, at the same time, there's a bunch of stuff out there that people would use if it ever dropped, right? So like it's funny because like we were actually looking at, so because Mark and I actually did this exercise recently together. We're like, okay, so like what's the stuff I'm excited to drop, right? And like we started looking through some uniques and like we were just like, man, we forgot we even added this, right? Like it's so rare. There's like 12 Astromentises that have dropped on the live realm, you know what I mean? It's like well, no, that's not actually accurate. There were 12 in trade. There were like 12 in trade at the time that we looked. It's like man, like okay, we I actually worked out recently because I've actually been recently writing simulator so I can like more easily work out some of what this going. Like we have like things we can do to work this out, but like it wasn't easy enough. I want to be able to just at an instant's notice as we're changing balance numbers, like the result on the item drops are. So I started writing a tool for that, and I found out that like an Astromentis will drop every 45,000 divines, and it's like okay, like
yeah, that's out.
It's like how many years do you have to wait?
That's crazy.
And it's like, okay, we're just like we're not in the right universe here as far as like the drop rate of something like that. So yeah, they effectively do not exist as far as a regular player is concerned.
So these drop rate buffs are pretty substantial. Then I didn't ascertain this.
Oh yeah, they are. They're very, very, very substantial. I mean, look, it's like I think in trade at the time we saw one was like selling for like 600 divines, and I'm like, this is actually technically cheap compared to the drop rate of this thing. I was like, people don't even know when this drops, so they're just sitting at like a thing. So yeah, this that needs to change, obviously, right? Okay. And like one of the key actual differences, and I get this is a little bit inside of things we don't normally talk about, but whatever, I'll talk about it anyway. So like one of the changes that POE 2 had that I think that in retrospect, we're actually going to change this back, and this is like a major thing that will improve things, is in POE 2 the chance of a unique dropping is scaled by the chance of the drop pool of that type of item dropping. So what I mean by that is like unique amulets are like rarer because they're an amulet, But in POE 1, this was not the case. Like all the uniques were in one pool that then like, you know, they all had an equal chance. I mean, not equal, right? There's rare and there's common ones. But being an amulet didn't affect the chance for it to drop, right? In POE 2, the reason why Astramentus is like so completely ridiculous is because amulets being a rarer like thing just in the base pool anyway means that the unique version of the amulet is now incredibly rare, like to a point where they might as well not exist. So what you'll see at like, you know, as a starting point is that jewelry that are uniques will be way more common than they currently are, just because we're now putting them back into the regular pool with the other uniques that they can roll together. And so that's like an example of the kind of thing that will improve it. And it's like, yeah, like some of the stuff just doesn't have an opportunity to be a chase item you're even thinking about because it's so rare you just don't expect it. It's like not even a thing, right? I mean, it's like effectively Mirror of Calandra Tear at this point, and that's not what we really intended and something that is going to change. So,
that's wild to hear. Hey, Astramentus stonks. Okay, here we go. Right now. Awesome. Maybe I'll find one. That's cool. Okay, so a little bit of a focus now as we get to the final section of the interview, dude, on the future of PoE 2. So just onward. One thing I'm really curious about, and I think a lot of other people are as well, many ARPG veterans have been conditioned to view the campaign as a blip in the journey. You know, you start there and you get through it as fast as possible. Obviously, Path of Exile 2 has been trying to change that. There has been tremendous discourse on this fact, you know, in 0.1 and in 0.2. I'm curious, taking all this and looking at it and looking toward the future, maybe even Acts 4, 5, and 6, how do you see the Path of Exile 2 campaign evolving?
Well, I would say that most of the stuff around this really comes down to the kind of like play speed concerns that people have. So it's like if we can address that, I don't think people are going to be concerned about like campaign length anymore. Like I would say that like it's not necessarily the case that PoE 2 is that much longer, if it even is that longer at all than PoE 1, if you would think of it in terms of like total distance you need to actually walk and number of monsters you need to kill. It's just that, you know, like it's just the pace is the concern. So if that is higher, or if like there's ways to be that faster in that way, then I think that those kind of concerns will definitely go away or down significantly at the very least. At the same time, it's not helping that cruel difficulty exists, right? Like that's certainly something that is like makes the experience worse. And like it's not like we want cruel difficulty to be there, right? Like it's a compromise that exists until the point we can get more content in. So like basically once we can remove that, I think as well that will help a lot. So that I think it's really the
0.4 มาแน่แม่จ๋า อยากจะบอกว่าพอผมฟังมาหลายๆมาสักพักใหญ่ๆใช่ไหมผมบอกได้เลยว่าไม่ใช่พี่โจละพี่มาร์คเลยแหละ ไม่ต้องกำหมัดกับพี่โจแล้วสมัยเนี้ยผมว่ากำหมัดกับพี่มาร์คแทนดีกว่า
combination of those things that are the primary reason why you know why there's a lot of concern over this. And so effectively, so long as we can fix both of those problems, then I think that stuff will be a lot better.
Okay, no announcements here, but there was an interview you did for 0.20 about Acts 4, 5, and 6, and how it was a little confusing, like the answer. Do you think that they'll be coming one by one, or do you think they'll all be dropping at the same time? I don't know if you know the interview I'm referring to or not.
I just don't. I unfortunately don't want to announce anything.
Oh, you don't.
You'll just have to wait for that one.
Okay, but, that's totally fine. All right, I get it. Okay, in the future, now you touched on some archetypes not being fully explored right now, and you might actually be buffing stuff up in this league. Is fire on your radar at all? Because compared to a cold and lightning, it just feels a little lackluster. And I don't know if you think that's just a like design or damage or anything.
I mean, okay, so I definitely would agree that lightning is in a better place than cold and fire. I don't fully know if I would agree that cold and fire are necessarily like that far apart from each other. This actually comes down, I think, to the thing I was touching on earlier about like the ability for a skill to scale. Like lightning, just kind of like when you're designing a lightning skill, like it bouncing around between enemies is kind of like just one of those things that tends to happen, right? Because it's lightning, right? Obviously it should do that. And so what that's kind of led to is like when you're not thinking too hard about scaling, lightning just sort of naturally scales more because it can hit more targets, because it kind of auto targets and bounces. You get those kind of skills that allow it to kind of get that kind of in-game clear ability. And fire and cold, it's like I think we have to be a bit more explicit in order to make that happen. So I would say that's kind of the reason. I think, like, I mean, obviously there's going to be balanced numbers and there's going to be a million other things and they're unique and there's like 20 other reasons why this can matter. But I think even just from the base level in terms of scaling, like Lightning just as a design space tends to scale more even when you're not thinking about it. And then the other two, yeah, not so much. So I think that's kind of part of why Lightning in particular is kind of like, ended up being something that has got more of that going on.
Lightning and Cold have like utility too, with like chill, freeze, electrocute.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
I mean, look, fire sort of has its whole burning thing. I mean, look, the whole difference between damage types things is also something that I think that we didn't explore enough yet in the unique space as well. So what I mean by that is, I don't think that conversion in PoE 2 matters that much because like there isn't enough kind of going on that like allows that to matter, if you know what I'm saying. So like it's kind of like that kind of stuff. I think like we need to like more mechanics, and uniques, like more sort of things in the game will kind of hopefully address that and like make those elements like matter more in terms of what makes them unique and different because of like what's available to use in the rest of your toolbox.
Would you guys consider support gems to convert elemental damage at any point?
I mean, it's not like, I mean, the thing is, right now, I don't think the conversion is really that valuable thing. Like, it's not, like, I don't think there's enough kind of going on. Then it's like, quintessentially, like, okay, so Acolyte of Chalula, for example, right? Like, the Chaos conversion is just, like, not really valuable like it should be. And it's just because, like, there's not really anything about that that's kind of, like, important enough. So, it's like, when this was designed, it's like, the assumption was, oh, like, converting to Chaos is valuable, right? Like, it was valuable in PoE 1, therefore it's valuable here, but it's kind of not because like of the other tools that are available, and so then it kind of ends up making that class like not as cool as it should be for that reason. So it's like then we either have to think, okay, do we need to be adding tools that are going to make that more, or do we need to be adjusting how that class works? Like, we obviously have to work this out, like make some other changes potentially, but it's like that kind of stuff. It's like sometimes there is just PoE 1 brain going on in terms of like, oh, like this is valuable in PoE 1, therefore it must be valuable in PoE 2. Like, you don't even think that fully through, right? Because you like to even understand why or it is or is not kind of depends on a full understanding of like every other, the whole unique metagame. The thing is like tomorrow a unique could come out. I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying tomorrow a unique could come out that like that makes Acolyte of Chalia suddenly amazing, right? It's like it's completely down to like the context in which it exists in. So what I'm saying is like, yeah, it's
going to come out next week, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to promise anything. I don't actually know for sure the case, but what I'm saying is like there's that element going on. So that I would say is part of the problem. Like we just need to make sure that we're like understanding a bit more about like what about. But look, it's easy once you've got players playing it and you can see what they're doing and you can see that they haven't found anything, right? It's okay, well, if they haven't found anything yet, that probably means they're not going to. We probably have to like actually come up with something to juice this particularly, whether that's the class or whether that's unique or some other element, to make that possible. We just need to sort of make that happen. And I'd say conversion in general, but Acolyte of Chalia in particular, like has like problems around that.
So you got that. You're segueing perfectly into a rapid fire question. Acolyte of Chalula, we have like 23 Acolyte players out there, and they really want some love. You guys aware? Is that maybe one of the candidates for a buff in?
Oh, definitely, for sure. Yeah,
it is. Okay.
For sure.
Awesome, fantastic, good to hear.
Chayula
Okay,
ได้บัฟว่ะ
You're not going to answer campaign
การันตีเลย
questions. How about let's do one more endgame question, then I got a set of really quick questions to answer. So, the infinitely expanding Atlas, as more people have played it, like I said, 6 months, going into like 1.0, whenever that comes out, are you confident this is going to be the system going into 1.0?
ถึงเวลาของ Chayula แล้ว
Well, I guess what I would say about that is basically, I mean, we sort of covered this before, right? Like where I was discussing the thing with the towers overlapping and all those various things.
Yeah.
That kind of really comes down, all comes into it. So what I would say is like, I don't think we've found it quite yet.
Okay.
I hope that I personally love the whole infinite expanding Atlas thing, like as an idea, and like I want to make sure that can happen. But obviously, like nothing, if it doesn't, if we can't make the end game awesome, then we will change it, right? Like everything's like
Not
that.
final,
Now, as I said, I think we've got a lot more to try before we have to change how that is. But that it's like nothing is sacred ultimately if it means getting in the way of like something being good. So yeah, like I want it to be there. We'll see what happens.
Okay, cool. All right, lots of rapid fire questions here, and then we'll close out with a question that I'm sure that you'll answer. You won't dodge me out of it at all. Okay, so div cards. We saw mention the winner in all three races is going to be able to make one.
Yeah.
Are they coming soon? And if they are, any changes from PoE 1, are they going to work the same?
Pretty soon. Fundamentally, they work similarly, but we do have some just like stuff to kind of make it a little bit like. I mean,
You can tell me. It's okay. Nobody's listening.
it's like there were some just cases in PoE 1 where you kind of had like some of the things you could pick kind of like were a bit silly, like in a way. Not okay, that's not quite getting to it. It's like I don't want just like 20 copies of div cards that are effectively ultimately doing the same thing, just because they got slightly different variations, same like exact stuff. So we're gonna control that a little bit more this time to kind of make it so that like, okay, if you're the div card that's this, then like that's your thing, and like no one else is gonna be stomping on that. You don't kind of have like a billion ways to all just give you like a mage blood.
Okay.
Like in PoE 1, you know what I mean? Like, so we want to just do some adjustments there, but that's kind of more of a thing around, the people making the div cards rather than the thing around actually finding them. So I don't have anything to talk about on that side yet, but it won't be too far away. We do have some pretty nice looking art.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. So,
is it going to be different from Path of Exile 1, like brand new art for PoE 2 for div cards?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Is the plan to still allow players to log into separate accounts via couch co-op? Because I know that was originally the intention.
The plan. That will probably be the thing that the console guys do after they've done the ability to transition from mouse and keyboard to controller on the fly, like on the fly.
Famously,
so once they're done with that, we'll probably work on the couch co-op different account thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I've heard chat is going wild about this, and I know you've talked about it ad nauseum, but I'm still curious. Any more options for armor or defensive layers related to it, potentially coming in 0.20 or 0.3?
I don't have anything to say about it at this point. Like, well, this is one of those this is probably going to be another freaking multi-day conversation with Mike to work out the details of. So once PoE 1's out, we'll probably have a long discussion. I'm certain about. Certainly something that people are very keen for.
Okay. Any timeline on adding passive tree layouts to the game? We know that those are coming in PoE 2. Any timeline on those?
You mean
the pathing? The pathing.
The thing where yeah. You know what? I need to follow up on that again. I actually don't know what the timeline was on that one. I need to go talk to the UI guys about when that will be. Hopefully, I mean, look, I want to get it in, so it won't be too far away.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to add an option to disable auto-targeting either as a global setting or on a skill-by-skill basis? I've heard some people complaining about that a little bit.
So I have a huge thing about this.
Not a rapid-fire question.
But it's like, this is not a rapid-fire question. It's a very complicated thing. Okay, so like, because I've got like crazy theories about why this is suddenly an issue and like all these other things. Like, it's like a whole... So because like, okay, PoE 2 and PoE 1 targeting is identical. There is no difference between these, right? And targeting in PoE 1 was not a big thing that people were worried about. Like, this just wasn't a thing. And so I'm like, why is it different in PoE 2? Because people have been saying, okay, it's like there's a lot of people talking about parallax error, right? So what we're talking about here is like targeting is relative to your feet, right? Mm-hmm. And like, to me, that makes total sense because I'm like, okay, like when you click, that's exactly where you move to. When you right click, that's exactly where the projectile flies over, right? Like, it seems to make sense to me. And so I always assumed that this was how every ARPG worked. Like, I actually just assumed that. Like, I didn't actually know, and I never really thought about it before because it was just so obvious to me that that's how it should be. But then when people started posting about this, I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to try out just like a bunch of other games and just see, like, really look at them, how they work. And I noticed that, like, okay, the first one I tried was D4, and I'm like, okay, they actually do this differently. They have it so that when you right click, the projectile exactly moves to the mouse. And to me, I'm like, this is insane, actually, because like when you click in the location, you run to a different, if you click to your right, you'll run right. But if you right click there and fire a projectile, you'll fire diagonally downwards. And I'm like, okay, like, and yet this is more intuitive to people. And so I'm starting to think like, okay, well, at least to some people, right? So I'm starting to think like, okay, well, what's the difference here? And then I started thinking like, a big change in PoE 1 and 2 was WASD. And when you're using click to move, every time you click, it's like reinforcing the fact that everything's relative to your feet because it's like that's where you move to, right? So you're like click, you're moving there every single time. Every single click is like reinforcing this like way of thinking about where things are relative to your character. Right. But when you're in WASD, oftentimes you are effectively just saying, I want to fire that way. You know, like this is the direction I want to fire in. So maybe you like internally in your head, you just sort of think about it differently. So if you're like, to me, it working the other way is actually unintuitive. And I actually tried in D4, like, okay, if I like don't click on the monster, if I like am specifically trying to click on the ground to hit the monster, and I just play like that for a little while, like what do I end up with? And I actually was missing all the time because once again, it's not intuitive to me. But I'm like, okay, but if like one of the biggest other ARPGs works this way, it does seem reasonable for us to have an option to change it to work that way. And so then I started looking into these other games, and so like I checked Last Epoch. That one somewhat inexplicably seems to look at your knee height, and I don't know why, rather than the chest height. It's kind of weird. So I don't know what's going on with that. What's it called?
Torchlight, maybe.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry.
Torchlight Infinite. I don't know.
Torchlight Infinite.
No
That's chest height. No Rest for the Wicked. I actually didn't check that one.
Okay.
But I checked. Oh God, what's it called? Whatever. There was another one I checked that was also feet.
Okay.
Like it is a variety, right?
Okay.
The game. But okay. But it's like Diablo 4 is obviously like a game that tons of people played. You know, you got a lot of people coming from that to us. Like this fundamental thing working differently is something that can matter. So basically, what I'm saying is we are actually looking into having an option for this. Whether or not it's the default or not is going to be an argument. You know, like that's a question. And I think that and the reason why I bring this up, right, when you just talk about the whole disabling the auto targeting thing, is because there's a very specific and this might even be hard to explain without a picture, so I might have to hold this coffee cup up here.
Oh, here we go.
As a visual aid here. So okay, we're getting right into it now. Basically, okay. So if you are targeting from your chest to chest, then basically, when you move off, like if this is the bounding box of a monster, then as soon as you move the cursor off that, then the location on the ground that is nearest to that will be closer in terms of like the angle that your projectile would fire to the like location, like you move a small amount of distance of the mouse and you get a small amount of rotation of the of like where you're gonna aim.
Right.
But using the system from your feet, it means that like when you move off a monster, that change in angle is quite a lot larger, because if you move off from here to here, it's like there's quite a big snap that happens. And so I think that when people are talking about wanting to disable this, it's because when they slightly click off the monster, it's resulting in an outsized amount of difference in angle of actual that you're attacking with. And so that sort of then means you're like, your instinct without sort of thinking about it too hard is going to be, oh, I just want to disable that, right? Rather than it just being that, like, if the 2 points were closer together, then that wouldn't be a concern that you would have. So as I said, I want to try just first, like, okay, let's just try with this thing to do that, and then we'll see how that goes. And then like there might be a world where I'd consider having it so that you can disable name locking as well. But I don't think that's going to be a complaint. Like it never was in POE 1. The moment that you don't have that problem. And as I said, I think in POE 1, the reason why it wasn't because people were so conditioned to how it worked from the way you're clicking to move. So I think it really is WSD that introduced us to that issue. But yeah, anyway, that's a long rant. It's like a whole thing that we're looking into at the moment. And that's what I have to say about that. But as I said, it took quite a lot of like thinking about it and working it out to sort of see what the issue was there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Diablo 4. We'll look out for it. That's pretty cool. Okay. So on consoles, the Hideout music player doesn't work after being bought. Any idea if there's a fix? Like people apparently have been reporting
honestly, like that was not on my radar.
Oh.
Go like immediately and just ask someone to see why that is. Because
we want to hear
there's almost
bangers.
certainly going to be a bug in the issue tracker.
Okay.
There's almost certainly a bug in the issue tracker sitting there about that, and I just need to say that that's kind of unacceptable that doesn't work.
Awesome. And then one little quality of life feature before the silly question. Some people have difficulty reading text in chat in game. Is there an opportunity to perhaps add some options like an opacity slider on it instead of being all or nothing?
So we for like a long time have been wanting to do like a full chat revamp. And the problem then has been that because we've got that in the like what we want to do, it means that every time someone suggests like a little thing, they're like, oh, but we should just wait to do that for the whole huge chat revamp. And I just need to actually make sure the chat revamp happens so that because we want to add more options and more things and like have a bunch more stuff going on with that. So yeah, basically before release, definitely we will have a chat revamp, and that'll like a lot of those kinds of problems we can just fix.
All right, awesome. One more Path of Exile related question, and one that is unrelated unless maybe it inspires you. Anybody in the office playing Expedition 33? I have to ask. It's the only game that's taken me away from POE 2, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, certainly. It's pretty popular. I played it. I kind of like I fell off right after the end of Act 1.
Really?
Not to spoil anything, but there was something that happened there that kind of for some reason just kind of made me go, I don't know. Like it just kind of maybe a bit unhappy now. People tell me that I really should keep going because there's a lot more cool stuff, and so I hopefully I will get time to do that. But yeah, and then Doom came out, and then there was that whole thing, and like so I kind of got knocked off again. But there's lots of people around the office who are loving it.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I know why you fell off, and it tells me a lot about your personality, Jonathan. So everybody can no spoilers in the chat, guys. No spoilers. But okay, cool. All right. Last question before we send you off, man. Thank you for staying a few minutes over. Okay. Jonathan, I duped myself into thinking the druid was coming into Dawn of the Hunt. I was like completely blinders on. Everyone was like, you're wrong, you're wrong. No, the druid's coming, the huntress is coming. I know it was originally supposed to like release with the huntress, and you don't need to get into timelines with the druid. I'm curious, can you reveal what kind of happened there? Was there like I heard something about animation snafus. Was it a balance concern? Like, what's happening?
It just wasn't ready. That's all I can say.
Just wasn't ready?
It just wasn't ready.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay. Are Bear and Wolf forms still planned? Those two?
Well, you will have to find out when we announce everything.
Okay. Well, I have a few more things, but I don't want to go over time, man. Thank you so much for giving me an hour and a half of your day. I know that you were booked literally the entire week except for this 90-minute window. So I really appreciate it. I do. So
no problem.
I wish you luck with the Path of Exile 1 League. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before?
Oh, not really. I mean, that's great. It's a great interview. Okay. So thanks very much. And, all right. I'll see you again next time.
All right. Definitely, Jonathan. Have a great one. Talk to you later.
You too. You too.
All right. Chat.
พอฟังแล้วก็บอกได้เลยว่าโอ้ my god นี่เราเข้าใจเขาผิดมาพอสมควรแล้วจริงๆถึงพี่แกเขาจะเป็นคนอย่างนี้ก็เถอะใช่ไหมแต่ดูทรงแล้วภาค2ก็ยังคงมีอะไรทำหลังภาคแรกออกเนาะก็ต้องยินดีกับคนที่เล่นภาค2ด้วยแหละแต่เข้าจริงจากช่วงสุดท้ายของเมื่อกี้เนี่ยก็แปลว่าเขาก็ทำรีเสิร์ชกับเกมหลายๆเกมพอสมควรเลยนะแต่จากเท่าที่ฟังมาก็สรุปได้อีกอย่างหนึ่งว่า 1.0 ไม่น่าเป็นปีนี้แน่ๆแล้วบวกกับว่า POE 1ก็ กลางปีหน้าจะทันไหมนั่นน่ะสินะแต่เขาก็ดูแล้วเท่าที่เขาบอกเขาก็บอกแล้วว่านะตอนนี้น่าจะเข้ารูทีนเดิมได้แล้วมั้ง4 เดือนต่อลีกอะหวังว่าเขาจะทำได้จริงนะ4 เดือนต่อลีกอะถ้านับจากที่เขาบอกก็นั่นแหละเนาะประมาณกลางถึงสิ้นปีหน้าผมว่า 1.0 อะหรือไม่เขาอาจจะทำเป็นแบบอันนี้ก็ได้นะเขาเรียกว่าอะไรอะทำแบบฉลองครบรอบ1 ปีอะก็ประกาศออก Early Access เลยอะคิดว่าไงผมว่าแบบนั้นมีความเป็นไปได้ทางทฤษฎีอยู่นะแต่ที่ผมเซอร์ไพรส์ที่สุดในการสัมภาษณ์ครั้งนี้ก็อาจจะเป็นเรื่องบัฟเนิร์ฟก็ได้นะเพราะปกติแล้วพี่แกจะไม่ค่อยมีบัฟเนิร์ฟมากลางลีกแต่ว่าเห็นรอบนี้เขาจะบัฟกลางลีกเขาบอกเขาพยายามจะไม่เนิร์ฟแต่ว่าเดี๋ยวเขาจะบัฟเห็นว่าจะบัฟมาตอนนั้นน่ะ 0.22 หรือไม่ก็ 0.23 อ่ะราวๆนั้นน่ะแล้วดูเหมือนว่าพวกเชสไอเทมที่เขาพูดถึงเนี่ยมันจะเห็นว่าค่อนข้างจะหลากหลายพอสมควรเลยนะแปลว่าน่าจะมีพวกอาวุธมาด้วยแหละถ้าเป็นอย่างนั้นน่ะแล้วก็น่าจะมีของพวกเคออสอะระดับหนึ่งอะแต่ส่วนเรื่อง defensive layer ก่อกูเนี่ยเหงาต่อไปดิแม่งเอ้ยอ๋ออันนี้โทษไอพี่โจได้เลยบอกไอพี่โจหนึ่งในเรื่องที่น่าตกใจที่สุดหลังจากฟังแล้วผมว่าอันเนี้ยน่าจะทำให้คนที่ดรอปแอสตานี่กำหมัดกันระดับหนึ่งเลยนะเมื่อคุณรู้เรทดรอปของมันแล้วอะ แม่งเอ้ยแทนที่กูจะดรอปแอตตากูไปดรอปกระจกดีกว่าไหมเนี่ยแบบ45,000ดีวายเลยอะกูจะบ้ากูไม่แปลกใจเลยที่กูเล่นแล้วกูไม่เคยเจอเนี่ยโอ้โหเขาบอกไงเขาบอกว่าเขานึกไม่ถึงว่ามันจะเป็นแบบนั้นไงเอาเหอะตอนนี้เขารู้แล้ว0.3มาสิงหาหรือกันยาเออสิงหาเลย0.2มันเปิดตอนไหนนะ0.2มันเดือนที่แล้วปะหรือเดือนนี้วะน่าจะสิงหาแหละถ้าตามกำหนดการนะแม่งได้โลต่ำสุดอีกแล้วชามเกณฑ์เพื่อแต่บอกตามตรงว่าจากเมื่อกี้นี้ก็ได้อะไรพอสมควรเลยนะมี 0.4 คิดว่ามี 0.4 แน่ๆละจากที่ฟังมาแลดูปัญหาหลายๆอย่างมีเยอะนะทำคอนไป70ดีไว้ไม่ได้เลยน่ะเห็นไหมบอกแล้วไม่ให้ผมทำอ่ะ โอ้ฮะโคตรโหดดูโล่นั่นสิ โหดเกินอันเนี้ยอาร์เมอร์1,000บล็อกชาร์จ51อู้บอกเบสบล็อก51มันก็ต้องอย่างนั้นอยู่แล้วแหละในปีนี้ยังไงก็ไม่ทันแล้วอ่ะจริงๆปีนี้มันก็ไม่ควรทันอยู่แล้วแหละได้ไปเว้นเพิ่มขึ้น 2-3K เองก็มันมี2ตัวเลือกไงทุบให้ตายไปเลยกับไอ้นี่ไงกับทุบแล้วก็ให้มันไหลตายมี2แบบไงถ้าดาเมจต้นตอนทุบมันแรงอะดาเมจเผามันก็แรงตามไปด้วยถ้าจะเอาให้มันสมดุลดาเมจมากที่สุดก็ต้องบาลานซ์เอาอะไรก็ต้องทดลองเอาเองแล้วล่ะว่ายังไงดีอะแต่อย่างน้อยๆก็ยังมีข่าวดีเกี่ยวกับไอ้นี่อยู่นะเกี่ยวกับวอริเออร์อยู่นะอย่างน้อยๆอ่ะอย่างน้อยๆสิ่งที่เรารู้จากจากทอล์กเมื่อกี้นี้ก็คือดาบจะเป็นสกิลที่เร็วโมบิลิตี้สูงในระดับหนึ่งอ่ะถึงแม้จะไม่เท่าหอกก็เหอะก็มีความหวังขึ้นมาแหละอยากดอกเดียวบีด2 คนได้จริงๆผมว่าค้อนระดับนั้นมันได้แล้วแหละแต่อาจจะต้องปรับทรีอาจจะต้องเวลเพิ่มอีกนิดนึงหรือไม่ก็อาจจะปรับของชิ้นอื่นไม่น่าคือความตั้งใจของเขาอ่ะเขาตั้งใจให้มันมี6ใช่ไหมล่ะเขาจะทำ8มันก็แปลกๆปะผมว่าถ้าเขาทำ8อ่ะมันก็จะเป็นการเพิ่มงานโดยใช้เหตุสำหรับเขานะผมว่าแต่อย่างน้อยๆอ่ะ0.3อ่ะมันจะมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงเรื่องไอ้นี่ด้วยอ่ะมูฟสปีดของตัวละครน่ะถึงจะไม่ใช่โดยตรงก็เหอะแต่ก็อยากรู้เหมือนกันว่าเขาจะแก้ไขยังไงที่ว่าเรื่องตัวละครเดินช้าเกินน่ะแต่เขาก็บอกเขาก็อุบไว้ก่อนแล้วเนาะว่าจะแก้ไงอ่ะสวัสดีครับ คือแบบมันเป็นทอล์กที่เรามีทั้งข่าวดีแล้วก็ข่าวร้ายไปในตัวเลยจริงๆถามว่าข่าวร้ายอะไรข่าวร้ายสำหรับวอลเลเยอร์นี่แหละแม่งยังไม่คิดจะทำอะไรเกี่ยวกับเกาะสักอย่างเลยแม่งเลยบอกเขาจะคุยเรื่องเกาะเรื่อง defensive layer นี่หลังจากปล่อย POE 1แล้วนั่นหมายความว่าจนตอนนี้พวกมึงยังไม่คุยกันอีกเหรอผมไม่รู้จะฟาร์มทำไมดีก็ยังไม่ต้องฟาร์มก็ได้ครับจริงๆนะเพราะว่าเห็นเดี๋ยวจะมีบัฟเนิร์ฟมาหลังช่วงนู่นน่ะ 0.22 อะไรอย่างนั้นน่ะเห็นเขาว่านะ0.223 อะไรเงี้ยจะมีบัฟเพิ่มเข้ามาในเกมอ่ะเนี่ยโอ้ผมลืมบอกเลยคุณนิระเนี่ยผมว่ากลายเป็นว่าคุณดวงซวยไปเลยนะรู้ตัวปะใช่ครับจะมี 0.22 0.23 และอาจจะมี 0.24 ด้วยซ้ำมีเวลาปรับอยู่2 เดือนเกาะคือเขาบอกว่าเขาจะคุยกันหลังจาก POE 1ซึ่งก็มีเวลา2 เดือนคุยกัน2 เดือนนะคิดว่ามันจะปรับให้เหรอผมผมได้ยินแล้วผมก็คิดหนักเลยนะจริงๆอ่ะเนี่ยใครผมบอกเลยนะว่าใครได้แอตตาแมนติสกลายเป็นคนโชคร้ายขึ้นมาทันทีเลยนี่นะถ้าถ้าไม่ได้ดูไอ้ไลฟ์ทอล์กเมื่อกี้เนี่ยคุณก็จะรู้สึกว่าโอ้โคตรโชคดีเลยดรอปแอสตามาแต่พอคุณดูไปแล้วอ่ะคุณก็จะบอกว่าแม่งเอ้ยกูโคตรโชคกูโคตรซวยเลยได้แอสตาเนาะก็เรียกว่าพอมีตัวเปรียบเทียบเข้ามาความเขาเรียกนะความโชคดีกับความซวยแม่งก็เปลี่ยนกันได้เลยนะจริงๆเนี่ยผมก็พูดว่าคุณรู้หรือไม่แอสตาแมนติสเรทดรอปเท่ากับกระจกอะนั่นหมายความว่าการที่คุณดรอปแอสตาก็คือคุณไม่ได้กระจกนั่นเองเอาออฟเลกาซี่เกลว่าไปดูสิอ๋อแต่คิดในอีกแง่หนึ่งก็คือเดี๋ยวมันก็จะปรับแล้วไปมะเมเปิลNFT ผมเล่นเมเปิลไม่เป็นนะดิโหยากเลยงั้นนะสำหรับผมอะอยากไปเล่นอะไรอย่างนั้นเหมือนกันนะแต่ว่านั่นแหละหนึ่งคือภาพมันไม่ใช่แนวอ่ะสองคือไม่เคยเล่นอ่ะ มันต้องใช้เวลาเรียนรู้แหละแล้วอารมณ์เหมือนประมาณว่ากว่าจะตั้งตัวได้ POE 1ก็เปิดพอดีมั้งเอลเดนลิงโดดล่มใช่ในเลนไงผมก็กำลังคิดอยู่เลยว่าผมจะเล่นดีไหมนะในเลนอะเขาเห็นหลายๆที่เขาก็เห็นรีวิวหลายๆจุดเขาก็มีบอกกันนะว่ามันมันค่อนข้างเป็นเกมแนวเขาเรียกว่าแฟนเซอร์วิสซะมากกว่ามั้งใช่ไหมถ้าพูดถึงแนวอ่ะเกมมันจำกัดเวลาด้วยแหละแต่มันก็เป็นเกมไอ้นี่แหละเขาเรียกว่ามันก็ออกเป็นแนวโลกไลท์อ่ะใช่ปะล่ะคนไม่เคยเล่นอย่างผมไปเล่นนี่น่าจะไส้แตกอะดูแล้วอะคือไอ้ตรงนั้นอะผมมีอยู่แล้วบอกตรงนั้นเขารอเอาผมไปยำแล้วแต่ประเด็นก็คือผมยังสองจิตสองใจอยู่ไงเพราะว่าหนึ่งด้วยเกมราคานั้นอะผมก็รู้แหละมันเป็นราคาของเกมแฟรนไชส์ใหญ่อะเพราะว่าเป็นเกมดังอะคำถามก็คือตัวเกมมันอะมันคุ้มกับราคานั้นจริงไหมอะไรเงี้ยว่าเดี๋ยววันนี้ผมก็ช่วงบ่ายๆเดี๋ยวผมก็ต้องไปธุระข้างนอกบอกต้องไปทำเรื่องหลายๆอย่าง ถึงจะน่าเศร้าก็เถอะแต่ตอนไปทำเรื่องเดี๋ยวก็ว่าจะนั่งดูด้วยแหละว่ามันคุ้มไหมไม่สำหรับผมอ่ะไอเรื่องตังค์อ่ะมันมีอยู่แล้วแหละแต่ผมหมายถึงว่าส่วนใหญ่แล้วเวลาผมจะเล่นเกมแนวแบบเกมราคาหลักนั้นนะผมก็จะคิดอย่างนี้แหละแต่ถ้าเกิดเกม200-300ผมก็อ่ะกดไปแค่นั้นแหละเล่นได้แบบ3-4 ชั่วโมงก็คือเกมดีแล้วแต่ถ้ามันเป็นเกมระดับนั้นน่ะมันก็ต้องคิดสักหน่อยไงดันได้อีกประมาณเท่าไหร่ก็อาจจะได้อีกเยอะเลยแหละไหนจะแหวนไหนจะถุงมือไหนจะสร้อยคอหลับอีกนั่นแหละรู้ใช่ไหมว่าถุงมือมันทำบวก1 เลเวลได้คอหลับอ่ะเพราะผมก็มีเหมือนกันมั้งแต่ว่าพอดีมันไม่ใช่ถุงมือที่ใช้ในปัจจุบันอยู่ไหนวะเนี่ยบวก1 อเมรีด้านมาได้ตอนเอาไปทำทอนเล่นถุงมือเจาะไม่คุ้มหรอกจริงๆนะเสียทั้งคีย์ดาเมจเสียทั้ง Attack Speed เสียทั้งเบสดาเมจเสียเยอะเกินไม่เหมาะกับสกิลที่ไม่มีแบบนี้หรอกนะงบประมาณทำน่าจะมหาศาลนะบอกเลยถุงมือบวก1อย่างนั้นอะ อืมเนิร์ฟก็เนิร์ฟลีกหน้าแหละ ใช่ใช่แค่นี้ก็พอแล้วจริงๆแล้วรอของใหม่ได้แล้วเก็บตังค์อะอะไรให้ดูหน่อยนะเห็นรอดูเชสไอเทมใหม่อะขอดูสเตตัสหน่อยต้องบอกว่าโล่มันก็เป็นหนึ่งในเชสไอเทมไงอืมอาจจะโดนปรับแหละ น่าจะเป็นค้อนใหม่ผมว่าถ้าเป็นของใหม่ที่เป็นเชสไอเทมสำหรับอาวุธรอดูมันก็วันพรุ่งนี้เนาะทำวินแดนเซต2ก็ไม่เลวหรอกนะแต่ก็ต้องทำคอนดีๆด้วยแหละมันอัปเดตอาทิตย์หน้าดิอีก1 อาทิตย์ถึงจะอัพครับเก็บตังค์รอไปก่อนก็ได้แต่ผมว่าสุดท้ายแล้วเวลามันมาวันแรกๆอะราคามันก็สุดยอดอยู่แล้วเนาะแต่ที่แน่ๆคือถ้าตอนนี้ใครมีแอสตาแมนติสก็ขายไปก่อนนะราคามันลงแน่แล้วโอ้ขอบิลนี้ลงสเคมาไม่ได้เลยต่างหากแต่ผมว่าเพราะต่อให้เรายังไงเราก็ต้องโดนตีอยู่แล้วโดนตีแล้วแต้มมันก็ลดอะลงไม่คุ้มหรอจริงๆวิธีการเคลียร์ของเรามันคือโดนตีไปลงเคออสดีกว่าขายให้ใครซื้อจับไม่รู้ก็แค่ถ้ามีก็ขายไว้อะจริงๆนะเนี่ยต้องเขาจะเนิร์ฟอีกเหรอเนิร์ฟอะไรเขาไม่ได้เนิร์ฟเขาเพิ่มเรทดรอปต่างหากเขาปรับเรทดรอปใหม่เนี่ยต้องถามว่าเนี่ยคุณนิรารู้ปะล่ะว่าคุณเนี่ยถือว่าเป็นหนึ่งในผู้คนที่ดวงซวยแล้วนะได้แอสตาแมนติสมาใช่มันดรอปดีก็ต้องบอกมันมีของขายดีกว่าแหละแต่ก็ต้องยอมรับว่าบิวเรามันลงไม่ได้ดิต้องไปโดนตีอ่ะโดนตีก็แต้มลดอ่ะพอพี่โจออกมาเปิดบอกว่าเรทดรอปของแอสตาแมนติสเท่าไหร่อ่ะจากจากคนดวงดีดรอปแอสตาคนต้องบอกจากคนดวงดีอ่ะที่ดรอปแอสตาแมนติสอ่ะกลายเป็นว่าคนที่ดรอปแอสตาแมนติสคือดวงซวยเพราะว่าอัตราการออกของแอสตาแมนติสมีค่าเท่ากับกระจกครับนั่นหมายความว่าแทนที่คุณจะดรอปแอสตาถ้าคุณดรอปกระจกคุณก็จะได้ตังค์เยอะกว่านี้ทุกวิวล้วนย่อมมีจุดอ่อนยกเว้นไลนิ่งสเปียร์ใช่จัฟ เขาบอกว่าอัตราการออกของแอสตาแมนติสอะมันมีค่าเท่ากับ 45,000 ดีวายอะก็คือมีดีวายดรอป 45,000 ครั้งก็จะมีแอสตาแมนติสดรอปสัก1 อันนั่นแหละครับก็คือดวงเท่ากันครับวิธีการคิดอะเขาบอกว่าความผิดพลาดเนี้ยมันเกิดมาจากการที่เขาสเกลเขาเรียกว่ายูนิคดรอปพลาดครับเพราะว่าถ้าเทียบกันแล้วอ่ะภาคแรกกับภาค2วิธีการดรอปมันไม่เหมือนกันไงแต่เขาดันเอาวิธีการคิดแบบเดียวกันมาใช้เลยกลายเป็นว่าพวกอามูเลตพวกจีเวลทั้งหลายที่เป็นยูนิคอะดรอปยากกว่าปกติมหาศาลแบบมากๆเพราะถ้าเป็นภาคแรกอะยูนิคพูมันเป็นยูนิคเดียวกันไงไม่ว่าจะเป็นจีเวลไม่ว่าจะเป็นแหวนเป็นสร้อยอะไรเงี้ยรูทพูมันรูทพูเดียวกันไงมันคือยูนิคพูแต่พอมาภาคเนี้ยกลายเป็นว่าพูมันแยกกันนั่นหมายความว่าอะไรหมายความว่าพวกประดับทั้งหลายอ่ะโอกาสดรอปมันน้อยลงเพราะว่าประดับอ่ะมันดรอปยากอยู่แล้วในภาคเนี้ยมันเลยกลายเป็นว่าประดับดรอปยากเพราะฉะนั้นแล้วยูนิคที่เป็นประดับก็ดรอปยากเข้าไปใหญ่ด้วยรวมกับเรทดรอปที่มันต่ำเป็นทุนเดิมอยู่แล้วกลายเป็นว่าแม่งดรอปโคตรยากไปเลยดรอปยากจนเหมือนแม่งไม่เคยมีตัวตนอยู่อ่ะเขาบอกอย่างนี้เองเลยนะพอเขาซิมูเลตดูแล้วอ่ะว่าอัตราการดรอปมันเท่าไหร่อ่ะก็อย่างที่บอกอ่ะ45,000ดีวายอ่ะถึงจะดรอปสัก1แอสตาหรือก็คือเรทเดียวเรทพอๆกับกระจกอ่ะเขาบอกอย่างนั้นอ่ะเขาซิมูเลตเอาอะสิผมผมว่าตอนเขาซิมูเลตอ่ะเขาซิมูเลตแบบไม่นี่มากกว่าแบบซิมูเลตแบบเป็นประเภทอ่ะเขาไม่ได้ซิมูเลตแบบ global โดยรวมอ่ะแบบอย่างเช่นเขาก็ซิมูเลตประมาณว่าแบบถ้าเกิดยูนิคมันดรอปอ่ะยูนิคที่เป็นประดับมันดรอปอ่ะมันจะดรอปยังไงอะไรอย่างนั้นอ่ะพอเขามาลองซิมูเลตแบบโดยรวมดูแล้วเขาก็เลยรู้ไงดีนะไม่ดรอปจากมอนดรอปจากกล่องก็ยังพอดูดีแหละครับแต่ก็ขอให้คุณรู้ไว้ว่ามันเรทเดียวกันนะก็คือดรอปจากกล่องที่ว่าก็คือมันก็เป็นพูคล้ายๆกันนะเพราะมันก็คือยูนิคเหมือนกันนะเพราะฉะนั้นแล้วยูนิคกล่องยูนิคประดับมันจะออกยากกว่ายูนิคธรรมดาครับนั่นหมายความว่าอะไรหมายความว่ามันก็โคตรยากเหมือนกันแหละครับที่จะออกแบบนั้นนะเห็นไหมพอมีพอมีตัวเปรียบเทียบอ่ะคุณก็จะรู้สึกได้เลยว่าจากตอนแรกคุณรู้สึกดวงดีกลายเป็นว่าคุณรู้สึกดวงซวยขึ้นมาทันทีเลยถ้าคุณไม่เปรียบเทียบเรทอ่ะใช่ไหมแต่อย่างน้อยๆเท่าที่ผมฟังดูเหมือนว่าความหวังที่จะให้ภาคแรกมี WSD ในการเดินนี่จะริบหรี่ลงมาอีกแล้วเนี่ยโคตรเศร้าเลยผมอะ ก็ต้องมารอดูว่ามันจะได้ไปต่อไหม หรือว่า หรือเขาจะไม่ทำ WSD ในการเดิน เห็นเขาว่ามันเป็นปัญหาเรื่องไอ้นี่ครับ เรื่องเอมอะเรื่องไม่ว่าจะเป็นออโต้เอมหรือเอมอะไรอย่างเงี้ยมันมีปัญหาเรื่องนั้นแหละครับ แบบเวลาเราเดินตัวละครเราเดินแล้วหันแล้วเราใช้เมาส์หันหน้าปล่อยสกิลเห็นว่ามันเป็นปัญหาตรงนั้นแหละครับ แต่ก็อย่างที่ผมบอกแหละว่าภาคแรกมันทำมาแล้วครับ WSC อ่ะทำอะไรต่อดีกันนะตอนนี้ นั่นน่ะสิมันก็เหลือเวลาอีกตั้งอาทิตย์หนึ่งอ่ะเนาะถ้าเป็นของผมว่าเผลอๆถ้าเกิดเอลเดนริงมันออกมาจริงแล้วผมต้องเล่นอ่ะผมอาจจะใช้เวลานั้นในการซ้อมก็ได้แบบเล่นคนเดียวอ่ะเห็นเขาบอกว่าเล่นคนเดียวมันจะโคตรยากอ่ะผมก็อาจจะใช้เวลานั้นในการซ้อมไปเรื่อยๆเรื่อยๆเรื่อยๆอะพอตอนเพื่อนมาผมจะได้มีความรู้ไงมีสมองหน่อยเพราะเพื่อนผมที่เขาชวนเล่นแต่ละคนเขาก็เล่นเอเดนริงกันอยู่แล้วไงมีแต่ผมนี่แหละที่ไม่ได้เล่นน่ะเล่นตัวใหม่เล่นอะไรดีล่ะผมไม่ค่อยมีอะไรอย่างนั้นด้วยทำใจเลยครับโอเคโอแลบ3หมดแล้วต่อไปนั่งทำโอแลบ2แต่ก็อย่างที่บอกว่าวันนี้เดี๋ยวผมไปเร็วหน่อยแล้วเดี๋ยวกลับมาช่วงนู่นแหละหลัง6 โมงอะผมอะวันเนี้ยแต่กลับมาก็น่าจะนั่งเล่นพวกวันฮิวแมนนั่งฟาร์มกันมั้งเพราะดูจากสภาพแล้ววันนี้น่าจะยาวอะ ผมอะอ๋อแล้วก็ผมอัปเดตนี่แล้วนะอัปเดตแมคโครสายสายวินแดนเซอร์แต่ว่าเล่นอวตารออฟไฟเพื่ออยากดูโอเควันนี้ผมมาเร็วไปเร็วหน่อยงั้นวันนี้ผมไปละเดี๋ยวผมต้องไปทำธุระข้างนอกอาจจะกลับมาใหม่เย็นนี้แหละโอเค แล้วผมไปก่อนครับโชคดีทุกท่าน